It's confession time. I have a confession to make. No, you don't have to confess anything. They don't pay you to stand up here and confess things to people. Our children can be dismissed, however. The Children's Church is going to be having a special little party today, so exciting for our kiddos. When it comes to Christmas shopping, I've always been one of those people. I'll admit it, I'm a Black Friday shopper. Oh, yeah, I know. But I've been shopping Black Friday sales for over 20 years. I'm not making this up. I used to go Black Friday shopping with my friend and her mom all the way back in elementary school. And her mom would have us stand in line for her, and I would bring the money that I saved up, and I would be able to get my parents really awesome gifts that they were super impressed with for really, really low prices. I always loved that feeling of them going, "How did you get this?" I just loved it. I loved being able to give to them. And my friend's mom would get really excited about it. We'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We would go, and she would get us donuts and hot chocolate from Dunkin' Donuts, and then we'd go to the stores, and we'd wait in the line outside. And it was just this anticipation, this excitement. We'd wait up with all those crazy early morning people, just waiting to get the best deals. And as I grew older, I began to shop for myself. I went in with a game plan. I had hidden tricks and secrets for checking out quickly, avoiding lines, and I always would time myself and pride myself for how quickly I could get in and out of the store, and I would feel very accomplished with myself. I was always able to stick to my Christmas budget and get more than people expected that I could get out of my little Christmas budget, and I always felt really accomplished that I could get all my Christmas shopping done in one day. But in recent years, Black Friday has turned into Black Thursday? I don't even know. Black Thursday, I guess. Black Thanksgiving. It's terrible. And it's just not the same. I don't enjoy it as much anymore. There's more people out, first of all. And some of them are literally just standing around watching the chaos ensue, eating popcorn in the lobby after they're on their way home from their grandma's house for Thanksgiving. It's just people just standing around just watching. It's like we never used to have that. The lines are longer. The people seem to be ruder. It's just far more chaotic than I remember. When we got up super early, it kind of eliminated a lot of craziness because the people that got up really early were really dedicated. And we knew what we wanted. We got in, we got out. It was polite. It wasn't crazy. People weren't getting trampled. It was just, they were like us. People had a plan. They went in, they went out, they got their stuff. But now it's like everyone and their mother stands around the DVDs at Walmart on Thursday night because it's just fun. I don't get it. It's just not the same. If anything, a tradition for me that used to bring me like excitement and joy and I'd get all pumped up for it has just brought me more headache and chaos and anxiety than is really necessary. This year I did like 90% of all my shopping on Black Friday online. I did go to Walmart Thursday night after dinner. My parents were like, "Really, you're going?" "Yes, I promise you I'll be back in 30 minutes. They were like, "Yeah, right." I was in and out of the store in 30 minutes. And I checked out at self-checkout, got everything I needed for Noelle. There were things that were specific at Walmart that I knew that Noelle would want. In fact, I'm pretty excited for Christmas morning because she's going to wake up and there's going to be an Olaf that's the size of her that I got for $10. I was so excited. It was my steal. I walked in there, Olaf, he's huge, and I'm just walking up to self-checkout. There we go. But the Christmas season can kind of be like that, though. It can be busy, chaotic, anxiety-driven. And if we aren't careful, the holidays can turn from this magical hope, joy, love, and peace to hustle and bustle and constantly worrying about everything. The truth is, Christmas is a holiday that's supposed to encompass peace on earth. But instead, it ends up being the exact opposite. We end up spending more time at the holidays worrying about everything. And if you're like me, You might spend a considerable amount of time shopping for that one really difficult person on your list to buy for. Everybody have one of those? I can't tell you the amount of conversations I've had with Pastor Chris about his dad, my father-in-law, that man. He has always been the most, I hope you're listening online, Dad. He's always been the most difficult person to buy for, and he knows it because he gives you just nothing. Just no hints, nothing. I don't want anything. He's just difficult, right? One year, he opens up an envelope from me. Is that me making all that noise? Oh, good, it's not me. Okay, sorry. So they can make all the noise they want. So one year, he opened up this envelope for me that had a gift certificate in it to this same tackle shop that he'd been shopping at for years. Somebody can tell him if you want to that their music is loud. You can tell him. And not me. I can't go. Somebody else can go. However, he used to go to this one tackle shop every year, get all his tackle stuff for the salmon fishing season, right? And this one year in particular had been like the fourth year in a row that I'd gotten him this gift certificate to this tackle shop because I didn't know what else to get him. And he opens up the envelope, probably knowing what's in it because it'd been 4 years in a row, and I just gave him a gift certificate to this tackle shop. And he looks at me and says, "Don't buy these for me anymore." And then he goes on an hour-long rant about the tackle shop and how it's all corrupt, and last year they stole 38 cents from him. And he goes on this hour-long rant about his 38 cents. Nothing says, "Thank you for the gift, dear," like, "Don't buy this for me ever again." A few years in a row, not in a row, it's never in a row, a few random years out of 12, I feel like I've nailed it. And he's been like excited. Those years are very far and few in between. I spend way too much time thinking about what I'm going to get for Chris's dad. This year, I think I nailed it. But who knows? It could be a total flop. It's a 50-50 chance. I think in the holidays, though, we worry about stuff like this. We worry about shopping for gifts, wrapping those gifts, baking everything on our list, making Christmas special for our kids, staying on budget through the holidays. Anybody staying on budget this month? It's rough. We also worry about gaining weight with all the sweets that you just made, finding the perfect gift. These are just a few things, to name a few. We also worry about keeping everyone happy at the holiday. We worry, especially since, the 22nd? We worry that we may have waited until the last minute to do our shopping. Any last-minute shoppers still haven't started or aren't finished? Yep, there's a few of you, Christmas Eve people. All of that can make the holiday lose its magic. And instead, we end up losing sleep with worry. To top it all off, it's also difficult to manage a family and a busy schedule for the month of December. So many parties, so little time, so much to do, so little time to do it. I wanted to take Noelle to Lights on the Lake in Syracuse this year at least twice because she's Christmas crazy. She loves lights. And I just thought it would be so exciting for her. We haven't gone yet. And now she's sick. So hopefully, maybe tomorrow, if she wakes up feeling a little better, we can go tomorrow night. But that's just the Christmas season. You have all these hopes of doing all these fun things with your family. And then when Christmas finally rolls around, you realize you never went to that Christmas village. You never drove through Lights on the Lake. You never sat with your kids with hot cocoa and watched the cool Christmas movies. And all of that just leads to guilt. Guilt that we're making the holidays too busy instead of memorable for ourselves and for our families. And that too can lead to a lack of peace. Take the busy schedules with the unexpected weather delays and canceled plans, and you find yourself feeling discouraged and overwhelmed. Turns out we aren't the only ones who feel lack of peace at the Christmas season. Immediately following the birth of Jesus was a time that lacked peace for several people for several reasons. And we're going to take a look at that today, at that lack of peace in the first Christmas story. We find this passage immediately following the birth of Jesus in Matthew chapter 2. We're going to be reading Matthew 2, verses 1 through 15. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem, in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen When they had seen it, went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." So this entire story reveals a lack of peace, starting with the wise men. First, they decide to take this risky and unknown journey based solely on a star and a prophecy. This journey would have been very dangerous and lengthy, and some scholars think that even on camelback, this journey would have taken several months. And then when they get relatively close to the land where the prophecy is said to originate, they stop by King Herod's palace to ask him for directions. Big mistake. Their lack of peace, however, is finally settled when they arrive to the place where the child is. And they present Jesus and his parents with their expensive and elaborate gifts. And all of their planning, all of their waiting, all of their traveling, and wondering if they would even find this promised king, all of that went away when they finally see him. When they finally meet Jesus. When they finally get to worship him. Then after their visit, they have to turn around and make the treacherous journey back home. You know, that's one of the worst parts of taking a long trip. Has anybody ever taken a long trip? It's hard, okay? First of all, you take a week or two off of work, right? But the first couple of days are just travel, and then you're there for a couple of days, and then the last couple of days have to be reserved again for travel. It seems like by the time you get there, and you unpack all your stuff, and you get settled in, and you get all excited, you have to pack up your stuff again, and then start driving back home. That's the worst. But can you imagine taking several months to get someplace, and then staying for a few days, maybe, and then leaving, knowing that you're facing another few months to get back home? That would be really rough. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they returned to their country by another route, which likely meant that they would be going an even longer way to get there, more treacherous, because they didn't want to go through the city that Herod ruled in, because people might see them. They'd be summoned by Herod. They had to go all the way around the outside. So their journey was likely even longer to get home than it was to get there. In the end, they were changed because of their journey, and because of all that they had encountered by meeting the promised Messiah. Their peace was likely returned to them when they arrived at home, knowing that they did what they could to protect the child that they had the chance to sacrifice for and to worship, and that they were far out of Herod's reach. Speaking of Herod, let's move to his part in this story. His passage focuses a lot on Herod and his lack of peace during this time. In fact, verse 3 says, King Herod was greatly disturbed. That's a lack of peace for sure. Herod gets so obsessed with finding this king that he thinks to be his political replacement that it maddens him. He lies to the wise men, and then when he's bested by them, and they don't return to give him the said location of the child, he gets really rash. We're going to continue reading this story with verses 16 through 18. When Herod realized that he'd been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. I can't imagine the desperation someone must feel to kill babies. I mean, it sickens and saddens me. This obviously is not the only time that baby boys were killed in the Bible, and this story draws obvious parallels to when Pharaoh ordered all the Israelite baby boys to be killed in Egypt in order to keep the Israelites from becoming too powerful, too big in Egypt in their population. So this in turn ends up pushing a mother, Moses' mother, to put her baby in a basket. And God protects and raises up that very leader who would set the people free. And Herod, in his desperation, becomes the second major political figure in history that we know of to order the slaughter of baby boys under age 2. It shows his real fear of losing his power, and it shows his great weakness. It takes pure evil to harm a child, let alone to kill hundreds of baby boys that aren't even technically a threat to you yet. Herod shows his true and pure evil in the core of his heart in this story for sure. But God's provision and his protection are very clear. And God warns Joseph in a dream to take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, which is another interesting parallel to the killing of the Israelite boys in Egypt. But this time, Egypt actually becomes a place of refuge rather than a place of captivity and death. It's all very interesting. This brings us to Mary and Joseph's uneasiness and lack of peace during this time. Someone was trying to kill their baby. And as a result of them coming after their specific child, thousands of mothers would lose their babies, and weeping would be heard all over Bethlehem and the surrounding areas. Talk about a lack of peace. They just had a new baby. People came and worshiped him, rejoiced in him. Angels sang, shepherds visited, wise men traveled a very long distance to present gifts and to worship him, and all of that is very short-lived. I cannot imagine the feeling of someone wanting to purposefully hurt my child. When I was in my postpartum time, I used to have these terrible, vivid dreams that someone was trying to steal my baby or hurt her in some way. And I'd wake up in cold sweats, and I would not be able to take my eyes off of her for the rest of the night. I can't imagine knowing someone specifically wanted to kill her. I mean, when I was postpartum, I would just tell myself, it's not real. It's not real. It's okay. I would pray for God's peace. But to know someone specifically wanted to kill your child is very real. And then after finding that out, they have to flee in secret in the middle of the night with a crying infant, hoping no one would hear them, hoping that their nightmares wouldn't come true, hoping that God would provide a way of escape for them to leave safely. I hope that they didn't have to leave to the sound of the other mothers and fathers whose baby boys were being slaughtered before their eyes. I can't imagine the guilt you would feel that your child gets to live while all the others died. Either way, this is obviously a time where the two of them felt very uneasy, always looking over their shoulder, always watching their back, trying to live and survive in a foreign country for a questionable amount of time until it was safe to return. The lack of peace is all over this post-birth story. And yet, despite the lack of peace, God was in and through it all, offering hope, offering solace, offering comfort. He spoke to the wise men in a dream and warned them not to return to Herod. He spoke to Joseph in a dream and warned him to flee to Egypt. And in the midst of utter tragedy, there is no greater comfort or peace than the presence of an all-loving God who doesn't cause evil things to happen, but certainly comforts and loves those who suffer. The truth is, peace is not something that we have in the absence of chaos. Peace is a gift we receive in the middle of chaos. In the middle of the darkest nights, God speaks. In the middle of the pain and the suffering, God comforts. And in the middle of a time of political unrest and evil rulers, God sends his Son in the middle of it all as a token of peace for the chaos of the world. But let's get this clear. The reality is that Jesus coming into the world was not the automatic solution for world peace. If anything, more chaos, more war, more tragedy happened as a result of his coming than they even had before. Jesus didn't come to solve the problem of world peace. And yet that was exactly what they thought the Messiah was coming for. They thought that the Messiah would ride into town and take out these evil and corrupt rulers and sit on the throne and rule like King David over Israel. They thought that the coming Messiah would bring peace to their nation, would bring justice to the political rulers, would bring an army with him to destroy all that was evil and unjust. They expected a king to rule, a king to solve their social and economic problems, a king to do what they wanted earthly kings to do. And what they got instead was a baby. A baby sent to earth with no intention of taking over any political regime or starting a war to rule over Israel. Jesus brought with him peace, but not peace for the world, at least not in the way the world thinks of peace. He wasn't the kind of Messiah that they were expecting. He wasn't the kind of Messiah that they even thought they wanted. And yet, everywhere he went, Jesus brought peace with him. Do a Bible search for the words peace and Jesus, and you find dozens and dozens of times where Jesus shows up on the scene, and the very first words out of his mouth are, "Peace be with you." You see, even the angels proclaimed this very message at his birth to lowly shepherds. This same message, glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth, peace. Peace to those on whom his favor rests. Jesus came proclaiming peace, but not the kind of peace the world was expecting. This peace was not something that ended wars or overthrew rulers from their thrones. This peace came on the quiet of an ordinary night. This peace came in the middle of chaos, in the middle of evil and injustice. This peace was a gift. It was a gift that anyone who believed and trusted in Jesus, the true Messiah, could receive. And that same peace is something that is offered to each of us today. You know, it may seem like inner peace is this far-off thing, something that only is offered to super spiritual people or people with no stress in their lives, people who do yoga, people who meditate. But in reality, peace is something that comes from God in the midst of our struggles. Let's look at Philippians 4:7. It says, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." The peace of God that is offered to us is beyond our understanding. It comforts the heartbroken. It calms the worries of the mother whose child is sick. And I have experienced that peace firsthand this week. It speaks to the heart of the victim of violence that everything will be okay. It's more than we can describe. In fact, I have felt this peace many times throughout my life. I've had a peace when it just plain didn't make sense to have peace. I can think of a few times where this has happened for me. When I got in my first car accident and I couldn't move myself from the car. When I gave birth to my daughter despite the many complications in my pregnancy. When I had pancreatitis and emergency gallbladder removal surgery with a 1-month-old infant at home. And of course, the many times over my life where my mom has been sick or hospitalized. This peace is something that I can't even describe to you. Not without a lot of time, maybe some coffee, and probably some tears of gratitude. Because it's that peace in the midst of chaos, in the midst of extreme difficulty, that's just a whisper to the heart. It's a calming, it's a trusting of the unknown. And in those moments, you're not even really sure why you have it, why you feel that, but you're grateful for it. And in those moments, you have this sense of blessed assurance. Remember that old hymn? Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. I think that old song has some great parallels to inner peace in the midst of chaos. I'm sure there have been times in your life where you can point back to where you have felt this peace beyond your understanding. Peace when it didn't even make sense to have it. Maybe we'll hear some of those stories next week for our Testimony Sunday. I believe that God gives us this peace when we need it most because he sent his son to show the world what the embodiment of that peace looks like. The peace we feel in the middle of our chaos is the exact kind of peace that Jesus came to give. It wasn't loud. It wasn't full of fanfare. It wasn't what people were expecting. People were expecting him to calm this furious anger from the government. And instead, Jesus calmed the storms of the sea. Instead of waging war against the rulers and the principalities of the day, Jesus instead came preaching, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." Instead of being who they wanted him to be, he transformed their hearts and their minds to become more like God. He raised the dead, he healed the sick, he welcomed children, and he calmed the hurts and the fears of every single person that he came in contact with. You see, Jesus showed up as a still small whisper of God's love for the world. And those that knew him and experienced him were forever changed. The world is forever changed, not because he came with horses and trumpets and armies, but because he came as a baby in the dead of night to humble people in humble places, proclaiming peace on earth and goodwill toward men. So in the last few days of leading up to the Christmas season, if you're feeling a lack of peace, you need go no further than the arms of Jesus. He promises to be with us, and he promises to give us the peace that we need. He even promises that if we ask anything in his name, according to his will, that he'll hear us and he'll answer us. And then ask for his peace. That's just the kind of thing that he longs to give. So if you're in the middle of a storm right now in your life, if you're experiencing that crisis or chaos, cling to the rock who is higher. Cling to Jesus, the only one who can give peace beyond our wildest understanding, right in the midst of your chaos. But you may not feel like you're in the middle of a crisis right now. And that's Totally fine. That's totally a good thing in your life. And yet you still might feel a lack of peace despite not really having any major reason for it. The holidays have a way of doing that, causing worry, causing anxiety, causing unrest in ways that don't really seem big or tragic. But this Christmas, I hope you will be reminded of exactly the kind of peace that Jesus came to bring. And I pray that you will stop for a moment among the busyness of the season, maybe even in the middle of your house, covered in wrapping paper, crumbs, and mess. Or is that just my house? And allow the peace of God to dwell in you richly. If you're not in the middle of a crisis, but you still don't have peace, then the second part of Philippians 4:7 rings true for you today. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. We need to be willing to guard our hearts and minds with the peace of Christ. That may mean when you're feeling overwhelmed, you need to stop and pray and focus your heart on Christ. You may even need to stop and say out loud, "Hey, Satan, not today, dude. Not today." I have said that exact phrase several times this week. "Yo, Satan, you have no authority here." Not today, pal. Not today. You have to stand your guard and not allow the crazy to penetrate your heart and your mind. If the worry of the season or whatever situation you're in is causing you anxiety or is causing you to lose sleep, you may need to just claim this scripture over your life and speak it out loud and allow the peace of Christ to rule in your heart and mind instead of allowing the worry and the unrest to fester and rob you of your peace. Despite a post-birth story where every character seemed to feel a lack of peace, Jesus came to bring peace that the world had not yet seen. He came to give the gift of peace in the middle of the chaos to people who didn't even know that it existed. And in the end, despite tragedy, despite pain and worry and loss, peace showed up in ways the world was not expecting or even asking for. And it shows up for us beyond our understanding in the times when we need it most. So if you feel a lack of peace today for any reason, simply run to the arms of Jesus, the one who came to give the world what it thought it didn't need, but needed most desperately of all. So this Christmas, may peace be with you, wherever you may find yourself. And may we rest in the blessed assurance of the Christ who came down to us right in the middle of our chaos.